I'm from South Philly, so, you know what I mean? Smile, shake your hand, you know what I mean? Pray next to you, turn around, blow your head off. Like,
you said smile, shake your hand, pray next to you, and blow your head off.
Yeah, all that vicious.
And I'ma bust your ass all the way around the board. That's just how I am.
Philly streets in the 80s and 90s, it was filled with gangs and hustlers at every corner.
South Philly, the 80s and 90s, adventurous. I would say adventurous.
That was the environment that molded Beanie Sigel.
All that vicious, that's where I come from.
Yeah.
Kill you, wash your body. You know what I mean? Kill your son and with your daughter. Yeah, that's where I come from. That's the world that I live in.
Which was why when Jay-Z tried to outsmart Beanie, he discovered the hard way what happens when you cross Philly's Broad Street bully.
Broad Street bully BC in the building.
This isn't just hip-hop history. It's a raw story of loyalty, respect, and a few that nearly broke the game wide open. And you're just about to find out why.
In case a get out of line, it's still there, but you know, gotta stay agile. You know what I mean? You gotta stay agile, just in case. You know what I mean? You know, it's text you when your gun go warm.
Beanie before the fame. In the gritty neighborhoods of South Philadelphia in the 80s and 90s, Beanie Sigel's childhood was far from ordinary. Born and raised in a world where survival often took precedence over education, Beanie's early life was a testament to the harsh realities of the streets.
I think South Philly, we would be considered how people look at Brooklyn, like we Brooklyn, South Philly.
South Philly wasn't just a neighborhood. It was a battleground with gang violence, drugs, and hardship around every corner. From an early age, Beanie learned that survival wasn't optional. It was a way of life.
Well, if you look at my my jacket, like 9 years old, 9.
Beanie Sigel's rise as a street figure began when he was just 9 years old.
That old man that y'all laugh at with the shopping cart pushing him and he's crushing beer cans and throwing them in a joint and he getting that chain from him. That's a person who makes something out of nothing or make a lot out of a little, and that's what I do. So I'm a hustler. I'm going to do something to make me $1.
The streets became his home, and the weight of that life hit him early. For Beanie, being on the block was not just about the thrill of rebellion. It was about surviving in a world where few made it out.
Yeah, I've been getting in trouble since 9 years old, juvenile policeman.
What happened at 9?
I think like a robbery or something like that.
By the time he was 13, Beanie was already living on his own, a product of a broken home and a childhood shaped by hardship. His mother did what she could, but his father's absence left a void.
But really like off the porch, out on my own, probably 13. Yeah, I ain't lived with my mom since I was 13.
For much of his childhood, Beanie was raised without the steadying influence of a father. His father, while physically present in the city, wasn't involved in his upbringing. Beanie's early memories weren't filled with the nurturing warmth that some children experienced, but with uncertainty and a fierce need to figure things out for himself.
He was around, but he wasn't around. Relationship really wasn't there.
Okay.
I got relationships with my other brothers and sisters though.
By the age of 14, Beanie had already spent time behind bars. His run-ins with the law weren't anomalies. They were inevitable products of his environment. Whether it was for a robbery or some other petty crime, Beanie found himself locked up at a young age.
Yeah, Slayton Farms. Yeah, I got locked up 14. I think that was probably the same thing, like robbery, assault, something like that.
For a teenager trying to make a name for himself, robbing drug dealers felt like an easy choice. He needed money, respect, and status, things the streets were always willing to provide in exchange for loyalty.
I had to hustle. I was out on the block. I was outside. Yeah, young age. I wouldn't, yeah, you call that hustling. Yeah, hustling.
Yeah.
Hustle,
survival
survive. Yeah, I was in survival mode.
Yeah.
As a result, Beanie became deeply entwined in the street culture of South Philly. It was here that he met many of his mentors, men who guided them, though their paths were filled with violence, crime, and survival.
The people I hung out with, I mean, in layman's terms, I was a crash dummy.
Education was never a priority for Beanie. The classroom felt like a waste of time when there was money to be made and streets to navigate. He spent a brief period attending school, but it wasn't long before he dropped out. Beanie's rebellion against the system wasn't just about skipping class, it was about the sense of urgency he felt every day.
My age group, who I hung with, I was the one that was allowed to hang with the older cats. So I used to do stuff. That was South Philly.
From streets to sound. It wasn't long before Beanie Sigel found his voice in hip-hop. In the late 90s, Beanie was still immersed in street life. His reputation as a hustler and a tough guy was well established in Philly. At the time, music was just an afterthought, just something people did for fun or a way to pass the time.
He used to write all his rhymes sitting on the step. I used to sit down with him, no beat, no nothing. In this house right here, when I used to stand here and I wrote my first rap.
I met a cat named Murder Mill, and he actually really made me want to start writing.
His rough upbringing, experiences in the streets, and struggles with authority were all woven into the fabric of his music. His story became his power, an undeniable presence in the rap game. The hunger, the pain, and the rage of his youth poured out through his lyrics, making him a voice for the voiceless.
Rap, but my raps was different because I can only rap about what I was seeing or what I was doing. So, and that was the music that she was getting from me.
It wasn't long before Beanie's raw talent and his unapologetic nature got the attention of some of the biggest names in hip-hop. Among them was Jay-Z, a rapper rapidly rising to prominence and building his empire through Rockefeller Records. One day, while hanging out with his friend Bubonic, a member of Philly's Most Wanted, Beanie found himself in an impromptu rap battle. It wasn't serious at first, just some fun, but when Boo heard Beanie spit, he was blown away.
At the end of the battle, Bubonic from Most Wanted, he was like, "Yo, you nice, yo," and we exchanged numbers.
He saw something in Beanie that even Beanie hadn't recognized, a raw, untapped talent. Boo immediately pushed him to take it to the next level, telling him he needed to meet with Rockefeller Records.
He called me 2 days later and was like, "Yo, my old head's back. I told them about you. They want to hear you. They want you to come up." And I was trying to duck them because I wasn't thinking about the music.
At the time, Rockefeller wasn't the rap powerhouse it would later become. Jay-Z saw something in Beanie, something that transcended just his rapping ability. Jay-Z had released Reasonable Doubt in 1996, but the label was still carving out its place in the game.
He told me that they had a meeting. They was going to New York a couple days to meet with Rockefeller, meet with Jay-Z, that I wanted to go. And I was like, "Yeah, I'll ride up there with you."
Beanie, however, wasn't thinking about rap as a career. He had other priorities. He was more focused on hitting dogfights and making money the only way he knew how. The thought of meeting with a record label seemed like a waste of time to him. His mind was still in the streets, where immediate gains and loyalty ruled.
Man, Murder Mill, he had a grand champion pit bull called Mikey, and Mikey had a fight coming up, and I was trying to bet this money on Mikey at a pit fight, so I wasn't trying to take that New York trip.
But after some convincing from Boo, who assured him this was a real opportunity, Beanie reluctantly agreed to meet with Rockefeller. What started as a half-hearted decision would change the trajectory of his life.
They tried to duck them from going up to New York, but he kept calling, so I actually took the trip and rode up there with New York just to take the ride with him.
Stepping into that meeting with Jay-Z, Dame Dash, and the rest of the Rockefeller team felt like a shot of electricity. Beanie's authenticity, his street wisdom, and his raw delivery immediately stood out, and this got him signed by Rockefeller.
So he was getting a little too aggressive, so I started rapping. So when I started rapping, Dame was like, "See, I told you." He thought I was from New York, and I had to correct him. Man, I'm from Philly. Long story short, I walked out that building with Jay-Z wanting to sign me to Rockefeller Records.
I went with him, got signed to Rockefeller.
And that's great.
Yeah, that's crazy, right?
The next few years were a whirlwind of success. Beanie's debut album, The Truth, dropped in 2000 and sold 150,000 copies in its first week, a huge success for a new artist. It wasn't just Beanie's talent that fueled his rise, it was the timing. The feud with Jay-Z. Rockefeller, under Jay-Z's leadership, was exploding, and Beanie's grittiness fit perfectly with the label's brand. The energy surrounding Rockefeller was electric, and Beanie was right in the middle of it. His contributions were part of the label's meteoric rise, and his involvement with the state property movie and rap group further cemented his place in the Rockefeller legacy.
Whatever you do, perform, go to the after party, go to the hotel, might get 2 hours of sleep, you back up, pack your stuff, get back on the bus, go to the next town, do that all over again.
However, as quickly as Beanie's star began to rise alongside Jay-Z's, tensions began to simmer beneath the surface. What began as a partnership between Jay-Z and Beanie Sigel quickly soured. As the two rappers shared a space in the Rockefeller camp, the tension began to build, especially as Beanie's career started to hit a peak. In interviews, Beanie would later reflect on the moments when he felt betrayed by Jay-Z. It was no longer about the music, it was personal. Rockefeller was supposed to be a haven, a place where loyalty meant everything, where artists weren't just products but were respected and valued for their realness. Beanie bought into that ideal. He believed that he had found a family that had his back, a family that was going to take him to the top. For him, it wasn't just about making it big in music. It was about the validation that he, the Broad Street bully, could finally rise above the streets that had shaped him. Jay-Z and the Rockefeller team were going to help him achieve that dream, or so he thought.
It's like I got something, and you know what I mean? And it's like, these niggas got me. And they don't want from me, they just want me to do this. This music, they got me.
Jay-Z, at the height of his career, allegedly started to pull away from Beanie in subtle but impactful ways. Beanie, who had been welcomed into Rockefeller with open arms, began to feel like an outsider. As Beanie's career started to take off, the tension between him and Jay-Z began to grow. Where Jay-Z's path was paved with careful business decisions, Beanie's was still deeply connected to the street mentality, something that Jay-Z couldn't always understand or embrace. What Beanie had seen as loyalty, Jay-Z had seen as a business partnership, and that difference was becoming harder for Beanie to ignore. The breaking point came during a pivotal moment in Beanie's life. He had been locked up and was going through court proceedings. At the time, Beanie was dealing with multiple criminal cases, including one where he was charged with possession of a firearm. During this period, Beanie had a difficult time staying out of trouble, which led to him facing legal consequences. He was arrested in 2003 and later appeared in court.
Yeah, like, bro, I had attempted murder and in the state and the federal gun charge and all this shit. The 40 years is over.
As he prepared to go on tour, he needed that support of his Rockefeller family. The question was simple: would Jay-Z step up and vouch for him? When the judge asked Jay-Z if he would take responsibility for Beanie's whereabouts while he was out on bail, Jay-Z's answer was clear, and it shattered Beanie's perception of their bond. No, Jay-Z said. The weight of that one word, coming from someone Beanie had once called family, was crushing. It wasn't just a refusal to take responsibility, it was a statement that would alter the course of Beanie's life and his relationship with Jay-Z forever.
And she said, you know, would you be willing, and that's the part that people don't have, would you be willing to be responsible for his whereabouts, not be responsible for my actions, just his whereabouts after all that good shit? And he said no. But it was like the way he said it, and he put his head down, he was like, no, I've never been crushed like that ever in my life.
Beanie recalled that moment in vivid detail, a moment that crushed him. For Beanie, the refusal to stand by him was more than just a business decision, it was a betrayal. For someone who had grown up in a world where loyalty was everything, Jay-Z's coldness was unimaginable. The impact of that moment was undeniable. It forced Beanie to reassess everything he thought he knew about the industry and about the people he considered brothers. Beanie's disillusionment only deepened as time went on. As Jay-Z's silence echoed, Beanie grew more vocal about his feelings. He felt abandoned and left to fight his battles alone while Jay-Z continued to rise in his career. Jay-Z's actions, or lack thereof, spoke volumes to Beanie. It became clear that Jay-Z had played the game differently. While Beanie had thought they were a team, Jay-Z had always seen it as a business venture. Beanie was just another pawn in the game, one who could be discarded when he no longer served a purpose. As if that wasn't enough, Beanie Sigel claimed that Jay-Z called the cops on him at the 2003 Powerhouse concert in Philly. Beanie was backstage, standing his ground when security tried to move him out of the area. He wasn't just another artist to be managed, he was a man with deep roots in the streets, and he wasn't about to let anyone push him around. When Jay-Z saw Beanie from the stage, his discomfort was clear. Jay had security move in to clear the area, and soon enough, the cops were involved. Beanie, who had always been loyal to Jay-Z and the Rockefeller family, couldn't understand why this was happening. It wasn't just a backstage disagreement, it felt like a personal betrayal. The man who had once treated him like a brother was now orchestrating his removal from the venue, and it cut deep.
Well, that angle was get Beanie Sigel the out this building.
Right.
Because if I got all these security is right here and this is standing right in front of me,
Right.
he was uncomfortable. You gotta look at it. Beanie Sigel, Rockefeller Records, on the biggest tour, moving around. Bam, he's locked up for attempted murder.
For Beanie, this wasn't just about music, it was about respect. The realization hit hard. Jay-Z had called the cops on him, essentially choosing to distance himself rather than confront the situation directly. Beanie, who had been part of the Rockefeller rise, was now being treated like an outsider in the very place he helped build. The silence and the coldness from Jay-Z felt like a betrayal that Beanie couldn't overlook, and the tension and distance between them only grew from there.
You didn't push him as much as, let's say, 50 Cent pushed some of his boys. How do you feel about that?
Well, Beanie Sigel at the time, and you can look it up if you like, was driving 2 Bentleys. I don't know how. It's impossible to drive 2 cars at one time. With his mama in the sticks and selling 800,000 records, I don't know what more can you do for somebody. You have to look in the mirror and look at yourself. You know, Beanie Sigel had a record deal, a record label, and a clothing line. I mean, it never went platinum.
But let's not forget when Beanie's career was flourishing. His connection to the streets was never far behind. His reputation as a Broad Street bully followed him everywhere, and no amount of success in the music industry could sever his ties to that life. One story that stood out was when Kanye West, fresh into the Rockefeller fold, found himself in a dangerous situation in Philly. A group of men approached Kanye and his crew, planning to rob them. Kanye, sensing something was wrong, called Beanie, who showed up almost instantly with his crew. With one look, Beanie made it clear that Kanye was off limits. The would-be robbers didn't stand a chance. That loyalty was Beanie's trademark. He looked out for his own, no questions asked.
He wasn't being paranoid. They had chairs pulled up to his table where he was eating at with his friends, and they wasn't eating.
Oh.
Yeah, so when I got to ask Kanye, yo, do you know this guy right here? It was like, nah, I just pulled the chair from him, and Kanye had his jewelry tucked in, like, take your chain out.
However, this same loyalty to the streets would later become his downfall. By 2005, Beanie was caught in a cycle that was impossible to break. His music career was on the rise, but so were his legal troubles. He was arrested and jailed for a year, a situation that couldn't have come at a worse time. Rockefeller, once a unified family, was splintering. Jay-Z and Dame Dash were at odds, and their conflict divided the label, weakening the foundation that had made it so successful. When Beanie was released from jail, the landscape of Rockefeller had changed. The label he had been a major part of was no longer the same. The division between Jay-Z and Dame Dash created a fractured environment, and Beanie found himself on the outside looking in. His group, State Property, which had once been a symbol of unity within Rockefeller, had sided with Jay-Z. That loyalty stung Beanie deeply. For him, this wasn't just about business, it was personal. He had always seen Rockefeller as a family, but now he questioned everything. Beanie openly spoke about his disillusionment with Jay-Z. In the wake of the fallout, Beanie even considered leaving Rockefeller altogether, looking into signing with Dame Dash's new label. His frustration with Jay-Z ran deep, and he couldn't understand why Jay-Z wasn't showing him the same loyalty he had shown him in the beginning. The betrayal felt more personal than professional. But despite his anger, Beanie didn't want to get caught up in the civil war that was tearing Rockefeller apart. He reopened talks with Jay-Z and re-signed with the label in 2006, hoping to rebuild what had been broken. Yet even as he worked on new music, Beanie couldn't shake the feeling that his career was being held back. His albums weren't being promoted as aggressively as Jay-Z's, and his success seemed to be stifled at every turn.
I was more bothered when Beans chose to go with Jay. That one hurt. Because I'd done a lot and prepared. I chose State Property over Rockware, and I wanted to just roll out with State Property.
Beanie Sigel was...
Yeah, he was fired.
And they will only let Beanie Sigel only sell so many records. This came from an executive.
Rumors circulated about an unspoken rule at Rockefeller. No artist could be allowed to outshine Jay-Z. Beanie's struggles with the label were a direct result of this, and it left him questioning whether Jay-Z had purposely kept him in the shadows. This meant that even though Beanie had the talent, his success was consistently stifled. His albums weren't pushed as hard as they should have been, and even with solid releases, they never received the full marketing effort needed to make them hits.
And they would only let Beanie sell so many records, and that was it. And they wouldn't push it no more. You couldn't be bigger than Jay-Z on Jay-Z's label. But all you had to do was listen to Beanie Sigel, and Beanie Sigel was, oh my God. Oh my God. And there's no hate to nobody. Jay-Z, you still my dog.
As the tension between them continued to simmer, the Rockefeller family began to fracture. Beanie's once unwavering belief in the label's supposed family values began to unravel. He realized that the same loyalty he had invested in the label had never been reciprocated. And as Jay-Z continued to rise, Beanie found himself further pushed to the margins. The silence that Jay-Z maintained during the feud only fueled the fire for Beanie, who now saw Jay-Z's success as a direct result of stepping on the backs of people like him. This feeling of sabotage was confirmed by insiders and even by Dame Dash, who hinted that Jay-Z purposely kept others from reaching the same heights. Beanie felt the weight of this. It wasn't just business. It felt like a betrayal of everything he had given to Rockefeller. The label that once felt like family now seemed like a system designed to elevate Jay-Z at the expense of everyone else. Beanie's troubles didn't just stop at music. His constant battle with the streets and his ongoing legal issues continued to plague him. He had multiple run-ins with the law, from drug charges to possession and tax evasion. Each arrest and conviction added another layer of tension to his already fractured career. In 2006, he was shot multiple times in Philadelphia after an attempted robbery, a stark reminder of the dangers of his double life. A few months after the shooting, Beanie was arrested again, this time for failing to pay child support. In 2010, he faced even more charges, including a tax evasion conviction that led to a 25-month prison sentence. In the years that followed, Beanie found himself stuck in a cycle that he couldn't escape. His career, once at its peak, now seemed like a distant memory. His involvement with Rockefeller, once a shining moment in his life, was now just a painful reminder of the broken relationships and unfulfilled potential. Despite his undeniable talent, Beanie's connection to the streets ultimately kept him trapped, unable to leave behind the life he had fought so hard to escape. Beanie's fallout with Jay-Z wasn't just about the music. It was about two men who had grown up in the same environment but had taken very different paths. Beanie's story is one of loyalty, betrayal, and the harsh reality that sometimes the streets don't let go of you, no matter how far you try to run. In recent times, Beanie's financial situation is a far cry from the success he enjoyed in the early 2000s. His net worth, once in the millions, is now estimated at just $100,000. Physically, he bears the scars of his past, having lost a lung due to a gunshot wound in a New Jersey shooting. His health is a shadow of what it once was. His story is a cautionary tale of what happens when someone can't let go of the streets, even when they have the world at their feet.